What we are going to do now for the next hour, and as long as people are willing to stick around with me, we are going to go ahead and go through the Sunless Citadel from an out-of-character perspective, and I'm going to reveal all of the secrets room by room, and we're going to talk a little bit about what this Citadel is, how it works, and whether it is actually the wonderful like beginner's module that everyone says it is. Spoiler alert, it is, but let's talk about why. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of the combat tracker. And we're going to put the fortress level of the Sunless Citadel, the DM version, which is now being shared with all of you.
Ooh.
Okay?
Oh, wow.
Yep.
This is the entirety of it. It is indeed much smaller than you probably assumed that it was at first.
There was an easier way to deal with that problem.
Now, pretty much always, yes. Now, obviously, at this point and before this point and beyond this point, we are going to get into major spoilers. Up until this point, you could at least keep some spoilers away because I did change a lot of things in this module, but we are going to be talking like blow for blow everything in this module. So if you don't want spoilers, this is not the stream for you, at least for the next hour or so. So first off, this is not actually where you started, right? Where you actually started was the little ledge there where you had the fight against the snakes. Yeah?
Yes.
Now
You mean
those
the fight against the snakes?
Yes, the bite against the snakes.
And none of us got poisoned.
Indeed, you all managed to succeed your constitution saves. That was going to be rough. Those were giant rats originally. Okay, there were 3 giant rats that were going to attack you the moment that you came down, and I want to talk a little bit about this fight because I think it's really, really useful. This plus the Twig Blight fight tells you that you need to be ready at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah? And I really like that. Like there is no getting around this. They are animals. You are not going to be able to diplomacy these ones. Did anybody have any particular reactions or to that encounter or how I changed it? I changed it to poisonous snakes simply because there was, of course, a request not to kill giant rats in this game, which I was only too happy to respect.
I thought it was fine. I thought it was that's a very natural kind of change.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like that, it's just another trope. There's just it is a mundane small animal that is hostile. There's nothing you can do to negotiate with it. Like pointy end goes into the thing.
Why did it have to be snakes?
Could have been crabs.
I got a big bag of crabs here. Yes. Or the crab rave. Anyway, yes, and that's sort of the idea is. Anyway, everybody, and it gives you a chance to engage in some capricious violence, and it also sort of set the stage, right? Especially given that I had specifically split it up so that the Twig Blight fight was at the end of session 0, and this fight was at the sort of beginning-ish of session 1. I thought that went pretty well. So then moving... Go ahead.
It also seems like it would also be a good kind of a level set for the DM too, because depending on how the players would handle that particular fight, if this did go through multiple sessions, that's an opportunity to do some calibration as far as CRs and or other tactics changes specifically to keep the party challenged.
I tend to err on the side of making things too powerful rather than not powerful enough, because I have underestimated enough player characters enough times to where, like, yeah, I try to. I'm tending to err on the side of more difficult. I'm not as capricious as I used to be. I used to sort of delight in killing player characters. That was the kind of DM I once was. Now I just happen to be very good at it. It's not something that I do intentionally.
Look at you maturing.
So then the next thing you noticed was all the crumbling mortar. Now there is there was a possibility that you all would try to somehow explore outside the perimeter of the Sunless Citadel, and it would have been just spiders all the way down. Well, I mean, so in the module, it would have been giant rats all the way. Mahjong has been a victim of my antics many, many times over the decades that we've known each other. Yes. But so the crumbling mortar, I'm glad you didn't do anything with that. That would have been awful. The trap at the very beginning here, right in the first area, which is called Area 3.
Yep.
You all found that immediately. Like, I knew that you would, I mean, player characters fall into traps. That's a thing, right? That's a thing. I love you, John. You're amazing. But I did not, I expected this to be the trap to set the expectation that there are going to be traps, right? I expected one of you to stumble onto it and get dropped into the room with a giant rat, which I have changed into hunter spiders. Anonymous, 1,000 bits, thank you so much. And that's not what happened. I think, Em, you're the one who actually thought to check for traps.
Well, yeah, you see that we had this DM who was like, "Remember, guys, there's traps here."
I did.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the thing. Like, I did do that, and the reason I did that is because I don't like traps as a mechanic in general. I think the whole you die because you step on a square thing is not fun unless you know it's coming, right?
On the other hand, you also know that because I'm a Pathfinder player who plays rogues, that specifically trades out my ability to do trap finding
For more
with
stab damage,
absolutely
yeah.
every rogue I play. Because what's the point? Like, honestly, I can.
The
throw a
point is on
fire
the
at it.
dagger that you are putting very, very harshly into somebody else. Yes.
Mind you, most of my rogues are dagger users that can do ridiculous amounts of sneak attack.
Jeff.
So
I like traps in context. I don't like traps. Nothing. You're correct.
Randomly.
Nothing is duller than you were stepped on the wrong square. Guess you're gone, dead, disabled, turn into a frog. Like, those are anything that detracts from the session and just takes away time from the session doesn't contribute to the theme.
Yeah, I agree.
And those I find troublesome. I do like traps, like, under certain contexts. One of the
Like
best
the poison
modules.
fountain.
Yeah, like the poison fountain was a great idea. That's a fantastic
Yeah.
example of a trap. That's a great way of reversing a player's natural curiosity against them. But like the opening trap, that's fine to set a mood. But like the kinds of dungeons you'll see in some designs and some horror stories is like the traps every 5 feet. That's no. One of the best sessions I've ever run involved a module which was literally, you are entering a tomb that is one giant cascade of traps.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
But
it's all about the context of what you're encountering the scenario.
two things. One, Psychanthrope says, what's my opinion on traps that inflict conditions? I'm actually a big fan, and that's what the poison fountain that we're going to talk about later did, right? Inflicted the poison condition, and that set the stage for the ensuing combat, which I really liked. So I'm a big fan of that, rather than save or die is a thing that I don't like. Unless you are specifically in a save or die campaign and you know you're in a save or die campaign, I'm not a fan of that. It's not fun, right? It's not fun to have to check every single 5-foot square because you're worried there might be a trap there. Unless that is your fun. Unless that is your fun, right? Like, and that's fine. Now, my big thing is, who the goddamn hell would put a trap door in front of their front goddamn door? Like
That asshole.
Someone who deliberately knew that everything he was leaving behind was utter shit.
So, yes, moving into area 4 here, this circular room. Now, there is a secret door here, which is also there to set the stage, right? If you are the kind of team that is constantly searching for secret doors, you will find this and you will fight the skeletons. You did not, and that's totally fine. I don't think I would ever imagine anyone to actually check that. Now, I actually pulled a DM little nudge and mentioned that Barnabas, being a dwarf and thus having rock lore, was able to say, hey, there seems to be something weird over here. Calder unfortunately flubbed the roll, and you did not discover the secret door. But I think even so, the fact that it's there and you have the chance to detect it and get a little more combat in, I think that's a pretty good idea, even though I feel like the vast majority of players or groups that run this probably will never open that secret door. What do you all think?
I do like the fact that it was there. And I think I agree. Like the fact that the majority of parties aren't going to catch it is pretty solid, but you know, it's there for it if you are that type of a group.
God.
No, I'm done.
I'm sighing as I was thinking. It's like, encounters like that's what I would like to call a trap encounter. It's essentially the same thing as a trap. It's a thing that has it is a thing that you find that has a monster in it. It's just the effect is, instead of a save take damage, it is a mini combat to take damage. It's the same kind of category of event.
Yeah.
I like that it gives you a hint at what the big boss is. It's like prepare for undead. Because you're gonna run into kobolds and goblins in here. But if you're doing the dungeon dive, you have to deal with the undead at the end.
There are in fact 2 places in here where you have to deal with undead. There and the Cold Door of Bad Ideas. Which is its canonical name now, forevermore.
Right.
Yes.
Also down in Belak's Lair. So it gives
Yes.
you, even if most of what you're going to be interacting with is an undead, it gives the players meta knowledge of that you will deal with undead.
So basically it acts as foreshadowing, but if you're in a place where it's an unnecessarily high barrier of entry to have that kind of foreshadowing, it's kind of You mean that might be something you might want to adjust the difficulty on, so they actually do kind of get that foreshadowing earlier on, personally.
Yeah.
Maybe just 1 skeleton instead of 3.
If you're
Yeah,
dealing with like a fresh adventuring party with fresh, with bright-eyed baby adventures,
That's what this is intended
Clear
for,
sword.
right?
Exactly. I think that's a perfectly good. In context, that's a great encounter. It's a classic. It's the classic. You've run across these mundane undead. There's no complication to them. Hit them until they fall over.
And go ahead, Gail.
I would also, if I was a DM running this, and if new players, if somebody had come by themselves into the room and opened the door, I would knock it down to 1 skeleton, so that I don't rush and kill just the 1 curious player.
Yeah, agreed. And what were you gonna say?
I said that if you're dealing with not particularly new players, but new characters, you can also hypothetically, because the circular room is a really good camp place, could use it as a middle of a long rest ambush, or at the end of a long rest ambush.
Yeah, that's also true. If someone camps in this room, then the door could open and the skeletons could spill out. That's an excellent idea. That's fantastic. And it also does a thing that something that I think is really underrated about this module that I'm going to be talking about a lot is there are 3 separate storylines going on here, in addition to what each player is bringing to the table, right? You've got the finding the Gulthias tree, or finding the people that you need to find, right? And getting into the place.
Plot A.
You've got that's plot A, and the Gulthias tree. Plot B is goblins versus kobolds. And plot C is really subtle and it's in the background. What is this citadel? Where did it come from? Who built it and why? And this is your first chance. These are elven skeletons. Now, I didn't ask for a thing on that because I forgot to mention that you saw it. But these are elvish skeletons, and you begin to get the idea that this is a much more ancient place. And I like that. These are archers that were trapped where they were when they fell. They became undead because of the horrificness or the horrific nature of their death. And like it hints at something that a clever dungeon master could make into an entire goddamn campaign if they want. I'm probably not going to, but you could.
Like, there's a bunch of like subtle nods to like throughout the architecture and throughout even the very presence of the Gulthias tree. and like the structures that supported it down below, the elven statues and the dragon statues, is that these were like some kind of like a society of elves that worshipped dragons.
Yes.
And they were
Or that were
elves, so there's
descended
that,
from dragons.
Yes. Or that.
so
Yeah.
they're these elves with this some sort of primal connection to dragons, but still to nature. So that's why why a lot of the like all of the plant imagery is still present. That's why all the dragon imagery is fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
But it was abandoned, and like from the context of like skeletons that are armed and a bunch of warrior imagery, you get the impression that it fell because it was taken.
Now, with specific roles that you may have taken and probably failed, you could figure out the actual dragon that this place was dedicated to. It is a red dragon whose name escapes me at the moment.
It has a lot of syllables. In
It starts with an A. A
Chardalon.
A Chardalon, yes, is the name of the red dragon that
He's still alive in Faerun.
Yes, a Chardalon is definitely still alive and may end up becoming, spoiler alert for very, very future, but like if a Chardalon noticed the activities that happened in his citadel, it's entirely possible that he may have taken notice of the player characters as well, which is another hook that a clever dungeon master can use later on down the road, which again, I love that they don't force this plot on you. It's just part of the background. It's like when you drop into Portal and you immediately see that everything is rusted and grown over and messed up. And you can tell without having to be told more or less what happened here. And that's something I really like.
And environmental storytelling is hard even for experts to do. So it's really cool to see it in this kind of form. So
the Dragon Door. Now the Dragon Door is a very interesting piece of game theory, and I would like each of your sort of opinions on how the first encounter with the Dragon Door went. Like, what were you feeling as players when you encountered this door that you could not bypass?
As an experienced role player, I felt mostly blasé indifference, because I knew that we would probably find something later in the dungeon that would open it, because it's clearly what it's trying to telegraph. As if I were like a new player just starting out, I might feel frustrated, but like there's enough as the dungeon is just starting out, and as you can see from the map, there's just a lot there to go. It would be like this. Okay, well, it's. I think the intent of it is we'll get this on the way out.
That makes sense. Anyone else?
Oh, as an experienced role player, I saw it as a primary opportunity to explore the personality of my character in situations that were not always going according to their plan. It is as a rogue, you're expecting to be able to I unlock the door, but it's like, if you can't do it, and I had a pretty good roll, if I remember correctly. It wasn't fantastic.
Yes.
But it was pretty good. But the idea of having you're picking the lock and you get that one pin, and as you get that pin, then three more fall, and you're like, oh goodness gracious, I'm gonna break a pick in this.
I made that particular bit up because I watch a lot of lockpicking lawyer videos. But
I'm an experienced lockpicker, so I get it.
Yes, that's where that came from. So the text of the Dragon Door, it is a DC 30 check to pick the lock. A knock spell does not open the door, but only lowers the DC to 20. So if someone had been able to cast a knock or dispel magic spell, it would have made it just a very difficult mundane lock, and you would have been able to pick it open. I think it is designed to not be opened until later, because let's be real.
Hypothetically could have done it.
Yes, it is always hypothetically possible, and it's very interesting possibility. How do you think these encounters would have gone differently if you had been level 1 scrubs when you had opened this door and encountered that crystal?
We would have been out the door.
I don't know. I think it only took one of you to succeed, right? If any one of you succeeds that saving throw, you can walk up and mash the thing.
Yeah.
The other option is if we could find a way to dampen it, we could have used that as a weapon.
Yeah. That's well.
Just hold it and walk forward through the entire thing.
The answer is no. You could not have done that, but only because I know that if you had tried to move it, it would have done the whole making things worse thing. Renee, I'm curious what you think about this particular trap. It's not deadly. It's not particularly horrific. It's just a please go away, polite bit of music. What did you think about this?
So I also see this particular piece primarily in video game design, where you come across something, and you like basically a locked door, and it says you can't open that right now, and then you have to basically the narrative takes you in a different direction, but you always have the option of coming back at another time when you have the prerequisites. It's basically a you are not tall enough to ride this ride sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's how I perceive it.
I really like that, because that's what to face the challenges beyond. If you are able to face the challenge of the door and the orb, then you are probably sufficiently powerful or resourceful to face the challenges beyond. Kind of like, I keep going back to Durlag's Tower in, is that Neverwinter? I don't remember which video game that's in, but there's a couple of really tough enemies right at the beginning that act as, this is a terrible word in role-playing these days, but they act as gatekeepers to keep you from accessing something that your characters are not ready for. I think the door and the orb really do a decent job of that.
Mm-hmm. And I understand from like an art...
Renee?
Sorry. I understand...
Renee again?
I keep doing this. Hello? I understand from like a real life architecture standpoint that sort of thing is absolutely going to happen. But at the same time, I kind of look at it and go, okay, in a role-playing game with, super happy fun times, we could potentially just suspend some of the disbelief there a little bit and have it be a little bit more linear.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's definitely like a place for stuff like that, but you have to be really careful in how you approach it. It sounds like this one was approached okay. I think I actually missed the session when y'all came through this one, but
that was this session.
Oh. Oh,
well, it was early. It was early in this session.
It was like a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, I think I actually missed that part of the session because I was busy,
What? You had real life happening instead of watching our stream every single possible moment? How dare you?
I am offended, but only fakely.
I was making sure that everything was working for this stream.
Jeff, were you about to say something as well about the room and the trap or something like that?
I have an issue like on a personal, because the idea of like any session is that there's an economy of time, and I have a design like sticking point for any kind of like compulsion based trap, and compulsion based traps are great. They are fantastic when their actions contribute to like the danger of a session and involve interaction. The runaway power, the only utility of the runaway power is to end the encounter.
That's true.
And so setting that up as a trap is it just essentially creates if people have the thing where they all fail the check, their actions, their time, and the literal time it takes to say those words, do those actions, move their things across a board, that takes time. And when that time is taken up by something that is without a player's consent or agency, then that it is that segment of time is they're not playing their character, and that takes me out of the experience. I don't like that aspect of the experience. I even prefer like you attack your friend, because that at least involves the player rolling the dice
and doing some things, and
puts them in the paradox of I hope I don't do well.
Is that different from a character dropping to 0 HP and being unable to do anything but make death saves on their throw or on their turn?
I would say
Similar vein.
yes. I would say yes, largely because the reasons why they get to that point where they hit 0 HP is because they were involved in a thing that involved violence.
That's true. That's fair.
And like the context of the thing matters. And the runaway power thing that makes them leave the set scenario, it's like, cool, everyone has failed their saves. Now what? you have either created an encounter that they will not try and traverse again, or they'll try again and like roll the dice to try again, and like it feels like either they're going to brute force entry it, in which case why have the trap be there, or they're going to ignore it.
And that's my gripe with this. I do like the idea of having to make a save to progress, but the only consequence of failing is you back off, right? This is not a challenge here.
Yeah.
What is happening here is not a challenge. It is a delaying tactic. Sooner or later, someone is going to succeed in the saving throw and do just what Echo did and stab a crystal with a knife for some reason instead of just punching it for some reason, but that's okay.
On the other hand, like the mind control aspect, like the thing I described, like, yeah, you don't like, it's the first person who crosses a certain threshold in the room is subject to mind control. Possessed by the orb, it's growing bright blue, it's making that noise, and they're like subjected to a song, and they start violently attacking their allies. That is an effective trap.
Yeah.
It has the potential of actually it has the potential of causing danger. It creates tension in the group because suddenly they see something, but there's like a clear causal link to it, so it creates agency. So while it is time spent dealing with a trap, which is the point of the entire encounter, it at least involves a lot more active participation.
I agree, and I mean, it's not like I know anything about taking characters and turning them against the party. Gail.
Nope.
Along the lines with that, what I would replace this with, if you still wanted to have the delay tactic and then have someone figure out that they need to damage the item causing it, instead of making the players run away, I'd do something like, if you fail your save, but you don't want to encourage combat or damage this early in, then you could ask them roleplay questions like, your character is frozen in fear. What is going through their mind at this point as they are locked there?
That's
and then at least gives them something to come up with, even if their character isn't physically doing anything.
Psychanthrope, that is entirely why we are doing this, my friend. I'm glad that you are enjoying this content.
I also have one more.
Write shit down. You'll forget this. I guarantee
this
it.
trap does a great job of keeping PCs out. The fuck is the point of it in the context of the encounter?
ECs.
The giant metal door that requires a key that has to be owned by that requires a very specific key to open. Presumably, the next person that opens it is immediately subjected to this trap. So,
yes,
what purpose is the trap serving? Because as far as I can tell, this is an entire chain of events designed to keep presumably the Dragon Priest contained.
Yes.
In which that's why the spikes make sense. That's why the exploding demon makes sense. That's why the sealed walls make sense. The trap in the next trap in the main hall makes sense. But the compulsion given to us by the orb is
specifically to exit.
Run to area 3. So if for whatever reason the troll gets out, it gets into that room, it is now subject to the mental compulsion of leave.
What's up?
Okay, so my thoughts are the trap doesn't actually trigger unless if you get within 5 feet of the orb.
Yes.
So if you don't have an overly curious, stupid party like we are, then you can just fucking ignore it.
You can entirely bypass this, yes. If you just... I'm not a big fan of discouraging curiosity, though.
Yeah, and not only that... Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not a fan of that type of thing, but you can just that's probably a problem, hypothetically. An Arcana check could probably identify it as that's probably going to be a trap. The other thing is I would change its effect to be, instead of run to the exit of the room, run away from me. So that way, hypothetically, if it would go back, the troll in place, it would put it back through the trap that it just walked through already.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. But it might also mean
it might also put the orb closer to the middle of the room if that were the case.
It might also be intended specific. Well, I assume that the 3 orbs up top also did the same or did something similar.
The 3 orbs at the top probably had a stronger effect.
Yeah, and it's also entirely possible that it's designed specifically. That trap specifically was designed to keep people out without killing them. From a dungeon design perspective, that makes sense, but from a game design perspective, I can see how it could be a little bit dull. We're gonna go ahead and move on to the next thing because we are burning through time very quickly.
Sure.
I love that we have all of these thoughts, and I think that you are all giving amazing insight because I agree. I agree. And this trap we already talked about. It makes perfect sense. It is primarily intended to keep the troll from getting out. So long as you don't stumble directly into it, Clarion, you are able to you should be able to bypass it pretty quickly. But again, this isn't necessarily intended to be faced right at the beginning. What did you think of the riddle?
It was easy.
It
super
was.
easy.
It was.
But
It was so cute.
trolls. It was very good though. I enjoyed it.
Like I
Um,
like the idea of I love the idea of like the concept of like it is a simple riddle, yeah, but it's a riddle that like it's supposed to be something that an utterly stupid thing can't possibly think of. So like and that's like
specifically
that's
something that hasn't seen the
like, especially
sky.
something that is like I got the impression based on the fact that it's dressed in finery that that was like some sort of curse.
Yes, and we'll go ahead and move to that as well. So obviously, Warmbow isn't Warmbow, right?
Mhm.
Warmbow is a quasit named Jot who comes out and specifically just attacks you, and then it turns invisible and gets away and might harass you later. I decided to make it Warmbow because I love some more news, and I think people should absolutely watch that YouTube channel and listen to their podcasts. And hopefully they won't send me a cease and desist for using their character. But that is indeed intended to be a guardian there. The pit, as you correctly deduced, is intended to be there for, for deterrence, not from people coming in, but from the troll getting out. Now, you'll notice there's also a secret door down at the bottom that leads to a crawl space that would allow you to bypass the spikes. It wasn't important, but do you see these little footprints here? Because I made Warmbow a floating creature, I eschewed those footprints, but those footprints were supposed to sort of lead you to either the secret door here or the other room. It wasn't really necessary, I didn't think. So I just wanted to make a comedy relief character that would give you all a little bit of a laugh and maybe make Senpai notice me.
Sure.
Yeah, and to be fair, like when that first
Oh,
came up in the stream, I was just like, "Hey, hey, listen, hey!"
Oh God!
hey,
I forgot to
Lord,
mention it, but I
Lord."
absolutely am going to tell Dad where he can find that the white and red marble statue of a dragon
Nice.
because he 1,000% would want that.
So the question, well, we'll talk about that later because the kobolds probably aren't going to want to give that up.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
But maybe a trade. We will see. We will also talk. I forgot to mention the kobolds, by the way. And so I'm going to do that right now. The kobolds of the Sunless Citadel do eventually spread to take over the whole citadel and the grove. And Calcrix will be maturing from a dragonling to a young dragon, and will be taking over the leadership of that. So maybe or maybe not, we will be seeing Calcrix and the kobolds again, perhaps.
In 20 years?
Perhaps.
As an out of character note, Jeff loves the white dragons. Their design is perhaps like the most underappreciated part of Magic. That's actually kind of brilliant. I love their design.
Go ahead.
And so I love that idea. So I want to like follow up on that because I love how the white dragons are written in their personalities.
The thing, Gail, that I was trying to go for in that was that Calcrix was just going from Dragonling to Young Dragon in the course of this scene of this campaign. Right, that was the whole. That was the whole. Calcrix now can speak and understand, so she should be the one to choose her path. When Meepo made that whole big speech that none of you could understand. So that was kind of the vibe I was going for there. That Calcrix was at the very top of Dragonling and is now, like over the next several months, going to mature into Young Dragon and may or may not show up. Paladins get the ability to call them out. That's all I'm saying. So
Dragon puberty's got to be a stone bitch.
it's got to be it's got to be awful. That's why they keep it caged up until it's done. Maybe, I don't know. I'm making up this
The amount of
kobold lore as I
molting.
go.
The amount of molting.
So
Spontaneous fire breathing.
I don't know if this
Right.
Fire sprouting at a place you didn't sprout before.
I don't know if this is obvious or not, but I powered up the Dragon Priest a little bit. He had only 30 HP and could not multi-attack as his original form. I went ahead and gave him 50 HP and gave him his multi-attack back because I have seen how incredibly goddamn badass you all are, and I wanted to give you something that at least felt like an encounter rather than, oh, here's a thing that I'm going to stab while it's still sitting in its sarcophagus.
I didn't have multi-attack as Bedak.
You did if you had turned into a bear, but again, there were so many goddamn rules to keep track of in that particular encounter. Yeah.
That was not an easy character to play.
No. So
Yeah, and as Psychotherapist pointed out, it would be literal centuries of puberty for that poor dragon.
so that's the dragon door, and I'm kind of glad the way it worked out. I'm glad that you saw it first thing and then resolved it last thing. It created a really nice symmetry in this particular campaign, I think.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm just glad that we didn't have to fight twigs again.
when you made your way through the north door, all right, this area 14 has a pair of mephits in it, an ice mephit and a steam mephit. If you were to open that door and go in there, you fight the mephits and whatever, right? I found that encounter to be super boring and have no value whatsoever. So instead, I said that Area 14 was a brewery, and if you had went in there and cracked one of the kegs, you would have faced a beer elemental, which I statted from scratch. But instead of that happening, you all managed to correctly get your perception check. You heard Meepo crying, and you bypassed that room to go and see what was going on with Meepo. I am so fascinated by the character of Meepo.
Mhm.
Meepo is, bar none, the most beloved NPC in all of Dungeons & Dragons going back to Gygax. And I would love to talk for a little bit about why. Because, like, he starts out, he's just this pathetic, groveling thing, and then by the natural rules of storytelling, he will either die or become a better version of himself, right? That's
Meepo
the story
has a
that's being
full-ass
told here.
hero's journey
He really does.
in this one module, or he has the potential for a hero's journey in this module, depending on the players.
And I practiced that opening monologue with Meepo for weeks.
I believe it.
Like I made myself cry in order to try to evoke the kind of emotions I was trying to evoke. Meepo, if you couldn't tell, may as well be renamed emotional manipulation. Right? I used Meepo against you every single goddamn encounter. I used
did.
Meepo, and so did Renee. And so did Renee. We used Meepo to create an emotional reaction in you every single, not just every game, but every encounter. Because Meepo has this quality about him that makes you want to protect him, but also makes you want to see him succeed. I'm curious as to your thoughts with that initial meeting with this bedraggled, filthy kobold, and what you feel about his story and his development.
So my first response to Meepo was somewhere between, "Oh, that's so sad," to, "Oh God, please make it fucking stop. I will stab it myself if I have to."
You're welcome for the voice, Jeff.
It wasn't about the voice.
I liked that it was a fun, because I love the image that I had painted of Calder leading up to that scene of him just being this like blithely sarcastic asshole, and but he is the sort of person, when he sees a thing crying, his instinct is to comfort it. He is a tremendous disappointment to his demonic heritage. So
Yeah.
Devilish.
Sorry, devilish heritage is correct. And so he
Yes,
likes to actually
vindicated.
care about the small pathetic thing that it is. And yeah, it's the idea of like he was what I would call a like a ward NPC. He is his entire job is to be the thing protected by a party.
You could write a dissertation on Meepo, I think. I
Yeah.
think as a character
Until
study,
someone has.
Oh yeah.
I would.
As like
not
a
deny
game
that.
design element,
would
he's just
probably-
immaculately well made.
there is so little to Meepo in the module. To be clear, Meepo is a standard, ordinary kobold. I increased his health to 10 because I knew that you would adopt him immediately, and I wanted to give him a small chance of survival.
Humans will pack bond with anything.
Yes, of course, and
Accurate statement.
and that's fine because 10 HP is not broken or overpowered or anything like that.
Oh, yeah,
he fell
went
an
down,
awful lot.
Like that was a joke that he went down once a fight.
but like with just a few lines of dialogue, which I made up most of the dialogue, but the situation and the character design I feel is such that unless a group is full of murder hobos who decide to simply just stab first and ask questions never, like, of course you're going to help this creature. Of course you are, unless you are a monster. Like,
As a monster.
and I really appreciate that. And most of the rest of this is just kobold areas. And you didn't have to deal with it because the kobold areas are all not something you had to fight your way through. We've got barracks, we've got living quarters. You all jumped straight to the dragon, like the Hall of Dragons and the throne, and had just a wonderful bit of interaction.
What's that bit little passageway just above the throne?
That is where the kobolds go to farm food from the Underdark.
Ah, neat.
Which you never got to because that wasn't a part of our story, but yes.
Yeah. And something else to kind of sorry. Something
Like,
else
this is just me being like, it's like one here, and I got a jet.
Go.
Have
I'm
a
gonna
great
have
one.
to jet too.
go sleep. Yeah.
I've got an eye appointment tomorrow, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Take
Go
care,
sleep.
friends.
VOD, y'all.
Mwah. Love you all to bits.
I love you guys.
Have a good
I hate
one.
the fact that I'm stuck using my husband's headphones. Oh, these are sucky.
Bye, y'all.
Me.
Bye-bye.
But
I'm gonna
going
have
back-
to do some wizardry really quick to be able to give us some graphics. Hold on. I'm gonna have to put myself in here. I'm gonna have to turn my camera off so that I don't get horrible images forever. There we go. Okay, so now I should be able to go back to the note table, and here we are. Excellent.
Okay.
So you were saying,
as
I'm sorry.
As I was saying, the concept of a kind of a ward NPC is definitely not new. In fact, it's actually one that I'm using to great effect in my V5 Sabbat campaign right now. It's basically there's a mortal who ended up being, trying to escape this cult that, the Sabbat pack just happened to be, adamantly against. And these literal monsters, these are, vampires who have strayed far, far from humanity, who are not supposed to have any compassion whatsoever, have literally adopted this little mortal and, basically taken her in as one of their own, even though that's going to go absolutely horribly, and I'm going to emotionally manipulate them with it with every chance.
Absolutely.
Like, even characters who are monsters will have that kind of reaction. It is very much a human reaction of the strong must protect the sweet.
And that's partially because the players are human beings, right? And they have
Absolutely.
compassion even if their characters are not supposed to. Now Eustriel was supposed to be bargaining from a position of power, and she sort of was, because one of the things said that if you offend her, she might just ask all the kobolds to attack you. So I was a little bit concerned that this might have been the first point of serious danger if someone had been too flippant, for example, because I know my friends, and I love my friends, and I know my friends are very good at being snarky. So I tried to foreshadow Meepo saying she's very proud, don't make her mad. And if folks had been very flippant, I might have just, hey, by the way, you get beaten into unconsciousness by kobolds, so how do we proceed from here? That is a possibility. I would not have killed anyone unless they failed 3 death saves. Everyone would have probably just been beaten into unconsciousness and captured, and that would have been a completely different story arc that would have been very interesting. So that's not what happened. You were all, of course, very, very diplomatic. Jeff, I know you are very, very good at playing the diplomat, and it ended up being a very simple, hey, here's a thing we're doing already, let's go ahead and get more money for it.
There's a joke in the game I run on Sundays where my players said something to the effect of, "We can't let the NPCs talk because if we do, Jeff will make them sound reasonable."
Yes, I do like. Go ahead.
And that's just it. Like, a lot of these characters, if they're really well written, like, they will sound reasonable because all of the logic in their head will absolutely make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a well-written villain will absolutely have a fine, sound internal logic. They will absolutely have a good reason for what they do, or what they will consider a good reason. This is not just, evil for the sake of evil. And that's
Not
really what makes it...
twirling.
Exactly.
Snidely Whiplash.
And it has its place.
Mustache twirling is all well and good, but still having a good reason for it. I mean, it's entirely possible that Snidely Whiplash wasn't hugged enough as a kid. I don't know.
Indeed.
But, like, that kind of stuff is fantastic. I'm actually kind of running into that right now in another Twitch stream I'm in, where the character is not necessarily coded as a villain, but is basically working at cross purposes with the rest of the group. But she has a very solid reason for doing so, and it's enough to pull the heartstrings, and everybody's like, "Oh God, I'm so conflicted."
And that's really
which I love.
The mark of a good, not just villain, but an NPC in general, right? You want them to be real people with real, like Eustrail, I think, had her own goals and her own aims, and I think she, if I do say so myself, effectively communicated those aims in a way that you were able to interact with very well. This was intended, like the kobolds are intended to be a diplomatic social thing. And I want you to notice really quick, in the first little bit of this game, we have now received all 3 major pillars of Dungeons & Dragons. We started out with some combat. The Dragon Door is very exploration heavy, even if you're not able to get to the other side of it. And now we're looking at the social aspect of the game. So very early on, we are giving players and Dungeon Masters experience with all 3 of the major components of Dungeons & Dragons, which is why I think this is a very a strong game as a tutorial game, as a first game for new players.
And I really like that social is in fact being included in there, because originally when this game came out, it was supposed to be murder hobos all day.
Yeah.
And as the game evolved, roleplay and storylines and that social aspect did gain a lot more precedence. And that's personally what I'm interested in as a role player. I came to role playing through acting. So, like, sure, I can chuck dice at something all day long, but if there isn't a good story with it that I can, sink my teeth into and choose some scenery, what's the point?
Yep.
Well, I like too that specifically the kobolds are, because you have the role play aspect of it back at the tavern, back in Oakhurst. You're getting your mission, you're trying to get as much money for it as possible, and you're investigating through dialogue. But here we get it again once you're in the dungeon, which takes you out of that murder hobo only mindset of back in town we can talk to people, here we just kill people, like breaking that dichotomy.
Yeah, I really like that, because that is the thing, like Diablo, the video game, right? When you're in town, you kill you kill everything. That's Elder Scrolls. When you're in town, you only talk to people, and when you're out, you only murder things, except when you find the one NPC that you can't murder, therefore you must talk to, right? So I totally get that idea. So then the kobolds. Now, there were 2 ways that you could have approached the goblins. Directly would have been really bad for you, because you would have had that first fight immediately, which would have sucked. But you could have done it. That was a valid possibility. If you had said, no, we're going to attack head on then I would have said, okay, go for it. But instead, we moved back here to this area 26 and 25, which was the first fountain and the cold door of bad ideas. Now, the cold door of bad ideas was easy enough to drop on you. All I had to do was wait for someone to get within 5 or 10 feet, right? It specifically says that it makes it colder to within 5 or 10 feet. That's fine. I had to actually point you at the fountains. And I did that deliberately because I knew exactly how it would go. If I was able to get you to interact with the fountains, I knew exactly how it would go. So I had Meepo, kind of poke his nose at the fountain in area 26 here, the fire-breathing fountain. And I knew once Meepo expressed interest and specifically said, meh, it's just, it's some draconic writing, but it's probably not important. I knew that you would all latch onto that. Right?
Probably not important.
Like, obviously, I knew that you would latch onto that. And so I had Meepo say the word out loud and have the reward thing happen. And this was all almost railroaded. Like, I almost forced this. I knew that you were going to get the potion. It was only supposed to be 1 dose, but I thought that I would give you 2 because I know how difficult the combat is later on. And so, yeah. And I specifically set it up so that the first time Meepo would say the word out loud, like under his breath, activate the fountain, and oh, so next time that's what he's going to do. He's just going to say the word out loud. Unless someone says, no, wait, Meepo, translate it this time, instead of saying it out loud again. I was giving the party an opportunity to predict a problem that you probably did not have any reason to predict. But then again, I had no reason to believe you would predict the trap at that first area 3 as well. So,
well, and then later on, when we were investigating.
My spider sense, pun intended, was definitely tingling around area 29. Like, I had the Mad Max moment of, that's bait.
Yeah, but then later on with the other draconic stuff around, like at the shrine, we were cautious and was like, Meepo, translate. Don't read, translate.
Yes, and he did, which was fantastic. And I loved that there were 3 options here of draconic writing. The first one, the second one where you learn your lesson, and the third one where you get to apply that lesson. And I thought that little trio of traps of the fire breathing fountain, the poison fountain, and then the sorceress fountain, which we'll talk, or the sorceress thing, which we'll talk about later. I think it's a really good sort of 1, 2, 3 combo. Now these were all giant rats again, right? This was all just a bunch of rats. I switched out the rats for spiders, but even if I had kept it rats, I think the idea of triggering the fountain up here and then having the combat start makes a huge amount of sense to me from the perspective of these are animals, and animals are able to understand that after this sound happens, easy food is in reach. So that's kind of, I was trying to make that not like an encounter intended to hit the PCs. I meant that to be like you just happened to fall into the lair of a very powerful spider creature.
I also like the imagery associated much more with the giant rats of like, and then a door opens up and these giant spider legs start crawling out of it like a trapdoor spider.
Yeah, I admittedly, I watched some videos and some arachnophobia content warning videos so that I could correctly describe the way that it would come out, and I specifically remember it forcing its way past Echo as it made its way into the corner, which was just yeah. I also really love the fact that clearly these other adventurers were doing things here, right? It really feels like there was another group of adventurers that came in here, fell for the same trap, lost one of their members, and retreated. Like, it feels like an actual thing happened here rather than this is a room for the player characters to stumble on.
Right. Those narrative, kind of plot holes where in other games and stuff like that, you're being sent in after these people, but everything is locked.
Yeah.
but everything hasn't been sprung, but everything's still covered with dust, and then
Yeah.
at the end you find them. Like, how did they get in here?
Those 2 traps were already sprung. They're not even traps, right? They were already defeated.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love it. So like you can see that the original group came in here, they discovered the traps, maybe someone fell in, maybe someone didn't. They jammed them open. They did the same thing that you did by saying, "Oh, hey, look, there's another dragon fountain." They said the words, they lost their ranger, they retreated. I thought it was a great setup.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
And yeah,
It is a well-crafted encounter. It makes perfect sense within the context of the dungeon, and even like adding the animal intelligence to it makes a lot of sense and makes it enjoyable in that respect.
And it really adds especially with new role players, you're uncovering a story. You know, even if they're not investigating, they're still getting to narrative-wise investigate what happened.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Which,
and
and then we have Goblin Alley. Jesus.
Renee.
I do like when the environment itself does tell a story, and it kind of, it basically makes the Citadel in and of itself a character.
Yes.
And that's fantastic. And I love when there's enough detail in that actually makes the location itself kind of have its own character and kind of, have a mind of its own.
I agree.
But yes, Goblin Alley, please continue.
Yes, yes. So now you actually went into Goblin Alley first, and then you backtracked and cleared out the spiders, and that was really fun. Now the Caltrop room, I had so much fun with this encounter because goblins are so small and so weak, and you were only fighting 2 of them. But there are these goddamn caltrops, and it's just far enough, right? If you're being careful and not taking damage, it is just far enough that no character can make it all the way across the caltrop field in one turn unless you spend both of your actions doing so, right?
Unless you are a goblin and a monk.
Right. Well, even with your 40
Which is
feet,
what
though,
I did.
even with your 40 feet, you were only able to get to the last square, and then you had to move out. Like,
Yeah.
it's...
But I had as a goblin, I have a dash as a bonus action.
Oh, that's right, because goblins are ridiculous.
Yes.
So that's
No, not a dash. It would have to take a rogue
it was
to
a
do that.
disengage, but yes.
Yeah.
Regardless, I thought the Caltrop room was really great. I thought that it gives you an opportunity to get access to a underrated resource. I think that Caltrops are severely underrated by player characters. I think that you should be using Caltrops all the time. I think that any encounter that you're not using Caltrops is a waste. They are the most amazing thing. And I especially recommend using them against oozes and puddings because rules as written, it will shred them before they can get anywhere near you. You can literally lock an ooze into place with Caltrops, rules as written. We might make house rules about whether it can flow around them or not, but rules as written, it cannot. It takes shredding damage. But that's way beyond this. So I made use a lot of held actions because goblins have to be smart. Yeah? They have to be smart or they are dead because they are small. And go ahead.
So I know when I first started making my character that I knew there were goblins in the Citadel because I'd watched your lead up episode to it. And I knew I wanted to make a goblin that was from the Citadel, but not recently. And I was worried that would maybe fuck with, now looking at it, there's not supposed to really be an option to do the politics with the goblins. They're just there to fight.
There is. It's Grenell, the elderly shaman, the elderly priest from the goblin tribe. If you were not here and you had not been the sort of in to get all of that goblin information, it would have been possible to politic the priestess into betraying Dern. But since we had Echo, I removed that possibility and made Grenell fanatically opposed to you because that made for, I think, better drama. But she would have been the in if you weren't.
Okay.
But you're right, the goblins are really a hack and slash exercise, right? It's unlikely you're definitely going to fight at least the sentries.
The 3 short corridors are also, it's a great economic use of tactical space for this kind of encounter.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with like these kinds of cannon fodder type enemies, the like it's the classic, Thermopylae battle thing. It's a way for players to feel strong because they're never going to get overwhelmed by the goblins, but the goblins can play defensive and in the wider areas and still magnify their power by using held actions to just layer a bunch of attacks all at once on the first poor SOB pops out.
Yes. Chris
It is
Thunder, welcome back, my friend. Thank you for resubscribing. You are amazing. 9 months. Holy crap. Sorry, keep going, Jeff.
Nice.
It is I'm just saying, it's a well done encounter. I can see you you just
Those low
refilled
walls,
it.
though.
Yeah, you refilled it.
Yes.
It's clearly an encounter that's meant to be fought through once, and by just refilling it, we're like, okay, that's what he's going to do every time we come through this area. So,
Yes.
like we wised up after the first time it refilled.
Yeah, well, I mean, because that's the thing, right? You fight enemies, and they're not just going to stay in their rooms, right? Enemies, if their sentries are killed and they find out about it, they will send a hobgoblin sergeant with more sentries, for example, to guard the specific door that you came in and reset any caltrops that need to be reset. And that was your first sort of lesson that these goblins are not just going to sit back and be attacked. They are going to proactively. And if you had just stayed back and rested and stayed back and rested and stayed back and rested, like they would have started to attempt to ambush you elsewhere in the Citadel. Like they would have possibly maybe jumped you when you tried to attack the spiders if you had done things in a different timing. And that was all possibilities that I was prepared to deal with if necessary. A big Dungeon Master tip that I can give to you Dungeon Masters out there is, in addition to where all of the enemies are, keep a master list of how many of them are around and how many of them are dead, so that you can move enemies from room to room without necessarily accidentally inflating or undercounting your own forces. Now, again, you can just add or subtract goblins whenever you want, right? Because you're a dungeon master. But it is good for that sort of organic feeling of you're depleting their forces and making them spread themselves thin, which is kind of what happened with these goblins. I love the low walls. I gotta say, a 3-foot wall against a bunch of level 1 and 2 PCs is just...
Yeah, it's basically full plate.
It's phenomenal. And then we had the prisoners, Urky Timbers and the Kobolds. Urky, I tried to cast as a somewhat less likable character.
But he's a nice backup ward if you've killed Meepo by this point.
Yes.
He also is clearly intended as a source of healing magic in case the party is lacking in healing energy at that point.
Yes, and the module does specify that he is willing to continue with the player characters until they reach the end of the dungeon. Like that was not something I made up. That was something from the module. Now, before we continue through the goblins, because we're going to talk about Goblin Town in a moment, but first I want to talk about the Cold Door of Bad Ideas. Mm-hmm. Now, the riddle that I gave you, I made up on my own. Mm-hmm. You must provide what this door lacks. Or what this room lacks. That I made that up on my own. The riddle that was given was rebuke the dead to open the path.
Yeah, we have no clerics.
Exactly. Someone who had, if you had Urky at that point, and he was with you, then he probably could have solved it. But the original thing was someone had to turn undead against the door, and it would open. Which, of course, none of you could do. So what I instead did was I made up a riddle. I'll not unbar for key nor axe. You must provide what this crypt lacks. And either a fire spell or a life positive energy spell would have broken the door. If someone had cast Cure Wounds and at the door or something like that, it would have also worked.
Maybe Radiant Energy.
Yeah. The first thing someone said, I think it was Clarion, was life, and that would have been correct. And also heat. That was also correct, which is why the heatless continual flame didn't work, because it was heat and not light that you were lacking. Everyone loves a good old-fashioned skeleton dust-up.
That's true.
That went pretty much. That was the Echo show mostly, because of
It
that.
was a good way of showing off
The
showing
bludgeoning.
off Echo,
Yeah.
especially since they're vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, and monks are kind of made of the stuff.
Exactly. Now, I'm really interested, and I know that Jen, of course, had to go to sleep, but the whistle is going to be an interesting piece of lore that is going to continue forward in this campaign, I think. And I'm going to have to ask Jen in between games how she utilizes the whistle, and does she just constantly have 2 undead minions with her at all times? And is that a thing that she's going to do? I like the whistle as an item, both for a power up, like a significant power up, by the way, for the team, but also as a potential path for corruption later on. What do you all think?
I think that's a perfectly handy way to have a babysitter too.
Agree.
Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead.
Yeah,
Undead.
Yes, I did it.
you're welcome.
But yes, the as an object, it's clearly quite powerful. It's probably the most powerful magical item we found.
It is indeed.
It also has like interesting lore implications.
Animate Dead is a 4th level spell. Being able to cast that once a day when you're is it 3rd? It might be
Like
3rd.
level,
But
third level party, yeah.
even 3rd level spells, you're not supposed to be able to access until level 5, right? And you were only level, I think, 2 when you picked up the whistle. So yeah, it is a significant power increase. I ceded to Jen that she wanted to blow the whistle after a victory, because that would be the way to note that, hey, look, it brought a goblin back. I liked the entrance of Fred. I also liked Fred's exit. Thank you, Renee. I thought it went very, very well. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like that whistle and Fred is one of the reasons why I had to seriously power up the Belak fight at the end.
Yep.
I love necromancers. They're one of my favorite parts of D&D and this whole genre. I love playing good and lawful good necromancers, and so I'm very interested to see what a character who's not a necromancer is going to do with the ability to animate the dead.
And honestly, I've been looking at the necromancer class of wizard, subclass of wizard, and I've been very, very interested. The only issue is you end up with the my turn takes 20 minutes problem sometimes. I think Fantasy Grounds is a pretty good way of mitigating that, if everyone gets very fluent with the mechanics. But yes, because you can have like 4 undead archers, like they don't even have to be cannon fodder. They can be you are now doing more damage with your archers than you would be with a fireball. Like it's kind of ridiculous.
It's less hassle in person because you can just roll all the attacks at once. You don't have to do it from the different tokens.
The Warhammer people are totally telling us how to do it right now.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about this fight. Now, after your second attack... Oh, wait, no, Calcrix first.
Yeah.
Calcrix...
Send Meepo into his death.
Calcrix is clearly meant as a stronger encounter, and I was so happy to short circuit it.
Yes and no. Remember that a dragon wormling does not have legendary resistances and does not... Like, it's still only one creature. 1v5 is going to be a win for the 5 no matter what.
It's just
still
whether
has
or not...
It's just that the breath weapon is far and away its most dangerous tool, and that could absolutely TPK a party.
And that's interesting. So the harness to keep a dragon from using its breath weapon, I made that shit up. The nets also, I made that shit up. But I felt like I had run into a plot hole in the module. Keeping a white dragonling in a cage isn't going to do shit if it can freeze you into an icicle from across the room. So I created and then kobolds are also very clever and they're also very good at building. So I assumed that they would have like a harness that would keep Calcrix from being able to take the full breath necessary, which is why Meepo was covered in claw and bite scars rather than frozen in shards
Frostbite.
on the ground. Yeah. So, but I mean, again, Calder just absolutely just raffle stomped Calcrix, and that's great. But two things happened that I didn't expect. One, did not expect y'all to let Meepo go in alone. Did not expect that in the slightest. I thought that I was going to catch at least 2 or 3 of you with the White Dragon Breath, which was a foregone conclusion in case you couldn't tell. Calcrix was written to attack Meepo on sight if she sees him. Period. End of discussion. No amount of preparation would have saved you from that, except for some sort of magical charm or something like that. You let him go in alone. You did it for good reasons, but
He
it
didn't insta-die by 1 point.
It became, yes, it became a save or die situation. If Meepo had failed that save, he would have died, and this whole campaign would have had a very different tone, right? Like
And as what I've been saying in the chat since the module started, if Meepo dies, we riot.
Yes, and I was expecting Meepo to die. I thought even if Meepo made his save, I thought that he would end up taking double damage and dying, or if I thought he would have ended up getting an instant death. I did not expect him to live throughout this campaign. I'm glad he did, and I had contingencies in play for continuing to use him to manipulate you if he did indeed survive, as you saw later on through his later conversation with Eustrael and his decision to stay with you. But I expected him to goddamn die here. And I'm curious how you all as characters would have reacted if that had happened.
It wasn't a lie. It would have been riot if, like, Calder's mode would have gone, well, I guess this thing's dead.
Yeah, no, Calcrix wouldn't have walked out of there alive.
Mm-hmm.
As a viewer, Renee, yeah.
Yeah, when I said if Meepo dies, we riot, I was talking about the chat. I was talking about like the viewers. Like,
Yes.
That would there would have been potentially like a small mob at your house, pouting and crying at you, Rob.
Wear masks, but yes.
How dare you?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I'm fully vaccinated now, so.
Like we had Urki, so maybe does he have gentle? No, gentle repose is a pretty high level spell. Yeah, I don't know. It would have been sad, and we probably would have been a lot more.
I feel like
with damage.
There is a possibility. Yes, you would have been much more violent for the rest of the whole module, I think.
And we wouldn't have gotten the benefits of bringing the dragon back to the kobolds.
Correct. So you would have missed out on a bunch of magical treasure. The kobolds wouldn't have attacked you for killing Calcrix. They just would have shunned you and excluded you from their area. And if you tried to go through their area, then they would have attacked you. But yeah, I had no idea how y'all were going to handle Calcrix. I did not expect Calder to walk in and just fucking stomp it into the ground. Did not expect that.
That, like, a part of that was, like, calculated, but some of it was also flex, because I know, as mentioned, Jeff loves white dragons. I don't know why. They're one of my favorites. And you can find it in their write-up. It's funny. They are, like, fiercely territorial and like have pitched battles with mountain giants. And giants can tame white dragons by beating them in battle and then intimidating them into submission, in which case the dragon goes, oh, okay, I serve you, but everyone else serves me.
And that may or may not end up being a thing later on, depending on how Meepo's story goes. As I said, most paladins tend to have mounts, so we'll see what happens there. I'm not making a guarantee there, but I have a feeling that Meepo on a dragon is something that would make the chat do whatever the opposite of riot is, which I think is riot, but happily.
Cheer.
Happy riot!
No, there's Happy Riots. Looks at football games.
So now
I live near Oakland Coliseum. I get it.
Yes, that's true. The one-on-one challenge was something that I made up, and none of you thought that was going to be a one-on-one challenge.
Oh no.
Not a single one of you. No, it was intended to be the most transparent trap of all time, and it served its purpose in that. Obviously, that goblin wasn't going to fight you one-on-one. Obviously, now too many tokens. Too many
I did
tokens.
like how we all kind of knew this is a trap, right? Yeah, trap. And but we were all deliberately playing it straight all the way up until haha, I have betrayed you. You are foolish. And we're like,
yeah, we know. Now,
I got the line beforehand. I'm like, your word's not worth shit. And he's like, you're right.
You're right. And
Yep, I remember that.
the other thing was because you had had a couple of fights and you had taken a long rest at this point. So at this point, the goblins had gone to Belak to entreat him for help, which is why there were twig blights and skeletons in that fight. Because they had gone to Belak and said, hey, these people are killing my people. And Belak's like, fucking whatever, do whatever you want, take a couple of the skeletons and some of the twigs, who cares? Just let me do my work, right? So that was a little bit of sort of under lore that is the reason why there were gardeners coming out and hitting you with shovels during that encounter.
The unintentional foreshadowing. Barnabas?
Yes, and that needs to be that needs to be cut into a montage there, because I went back and watched it, and the first thing you said was Barnabas, and I didn't notice it when it happened. I didn't realize, because I had already decided Barnabas was going to do the heel turn way at the beginning. Way at the beginning. I knew that I was going to use him against you in that way. And so you saying that was incredibly prescient, and I appreciate that.
I had no idea. I was just trying to make a joke.
That fight was... So let's... Getting aside the fact that too many tokens, and that is a thing that for DMs who are coming to this, do not put 40 goddamn tokens on the field. Just say that there are a bunch of non-combatant goblins, make the whole room difficult terrain, maybe, so that you have to wade through goblins that are panicking to get from where you are to where you need to be. Don't put every single token. It was a bad idea. It would be a bad idea with physical minis. It would be a bad idea with a program that is prone to lag when there are too many things.
If you're on like a dry erase board, you can just put little dots where everyone is and then wipe them off. Or you could
pennies.
Post-it notes, something that's easy to manipulate and then get rid of percentage-wise as the fight goes on.
Goldfish crackers when you kill one.
Yeah, do not roll individual initiatives for all of the non-combatant goblins in this particular module or in this particular fight. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
Make a swarm of goblins.
Yeah, there you go.
As one.
There are lots of ways to handle this. I think the way I handled it, which was as people leave, I deleted tokens off, and that lowered the amount of lag over time. I think that worked out really well. But I think if I had this to run again, I would come up with a more creative way of representing the fact that you are in a room full of panicking goblins. Holy shit, that...
Each one's like 10 goblins each.
Yeah. Holy shit, that fight with Dern.
That was amazing. That was beautiful to watch.
How we all backed off and just let Echo have it.
Except for Meepo, because pack tactics is pack tactics.
But at the same time, Meepo doesn't come from a society where fighting one-on-one is your honor, so it made sense.
No, yeah, it does. And it's perfect. And the reason that Meepo did that is because it was the one enemy that he could attack that he would have advantage on, because pack tactics. So this is one time when mechanics and... it's the one time when mechanics and lore really, really work very well together. Jeff?
I really enjoyed that part of the encounter because it was a great way of presenting a threat that didn't actually it was a way of presenting a threat to the PCs that did not rely on a PC dying, because at no point did I think I felt threatened. Echo was the only PC at that fight that was in serious
The goblins
They were
did better
gutted.
against you in the
Arms
ambushes earlier on than in this fight. Like when it comes to sheer damage done, the goblins did better in those winding hallways you were talking about earlier than in this fight. Yeah.
I did enjoy
Yeah.
greasing the goblin shaman. That was fun.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah,
but
the
it was
1-2
a
punch
good-
of Hyacinth and then you was a great little bit of thing that I'm hoping that maybe Gale will draw at some point.
Yeah. But the actual fight was like everyone had a part, and it was basically keep the fight off of Echo.
Yeah. Yeah, just
the goal
keep it back.
Yeah.
Right, and all I had to do was just have a slugging match with fucking Derek.
And both of you missed each other so many times, and you both hit each other so many times, and you were both down to like the tiniest little sliver of health when you were finally able to finish it off. Like,
Right, but the fact that I knew, like, I hit him and it wasn't enough and he was going to get a turn before, and I was on, like, single-digit health, and I did the line of, you can't finish it. And then he actually missed, and I was like, oh my god!
It was perfect.
I was 1,000% bluffing. He absolutely had it.
Yeah.
and one of the things I absolutely love was this is definitely a place where, you know, the spotlight was very clearly on Echo, but everybody still had a place, and
Yeah.
it was really beautifully done, and that was just like that was a beautiful capstone to that particular part of the arc.
Yeah, even Erky was there to fulfill the wish of the tier 5 hype train that chat threw up there to save Meepo.
Yep.
Right? So
Yep.
like everybody, even Erky, even Fred had a badass moment. Fred had that which I did not in any way steal from Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie. That wasn't in any way something I took from there, where you would stab them and then take the sword out of your own chest and continue to fight. But yeah, that was. I'm really glad with how the Goblin Zombie worked out, because it ended up being another slight pack bond, and one that I could destroy without it being, without inciting insurrection among my chat.
Well, and we got to see everybody's like character reactions to undead. You know,
Yeah.
There's Echo, who wasn't really, one way or another. There's Erky, who was like, that thing is evil.
What are you doing right now?
And everybody else is...
that was one of the best comedy moments, I think, of that later session of it's undead, it's evil, it's like a that was great.
And you responded exactly like I knew you would, because you and I have played together a lot. I knew you would be like, no, please, by all means, continue your thought. And like, yeah,
that is in fact how Jeff rolls.
and that Jeff and I we did workshop that a little bit before the game. He did express a desire to go into that. Evil isn't evil if free will, or evil is only evil if free will is involved, and like demons and devils don't necessarily have the choice to do what they do, and all that other stuff. And the arguments that you made, especially the differences between demons and devils, I thought was a great little bit of lore to bring up. So I'm really glad we did that scene as well. Yeah,
I did love how it was great when M said semantics, and I went no.
yeah,
There
I
is
agree.
a difference.
There is a big effing difference.
And then, yes, it's possible that the fight could have spilled over here. You could have taken that 8d6 damage if someone had knocked you off the edge, but that did not come up. So that is the keep
Goblin
level.
portion.
That is the Citadel level of the Sunless Citadel.